What's up, legends, and welcome back to another Unmatched First Impressions video. Today I'm coming with you with the T-Rex from the latest Jurassic Park set. Of course, it is Sattler versus the T-Rex, and so first I'll be taking a look at T-Rex, and then later today, hopefully the Sattler video will be out, so you can watch them back to back if you want. A couple quick notes before we get started. First of all, for the format of this video, this is a first impressions video where I'm just going over my initial thoughts on the character. After only a handful of plays, I'll give you some opinions on some of the cards and how good I think they'll be competitively, and maybe what some of the strategies I found with this character are, but they are first impressions. Like I said, I don't have a lot of plays with this character, especially Sattler. I have a little bit more with the T-Rex. So a lot of my thoughts will be wrong. Actually, a couple days ago, someone commented on my Battle of Legends Volume 2 First Impressions video and was like, I don't think those tips you gave for Achilles were very good. And I said, I don't either. So things change over time, and this is just like a fun exercise to just explore a character just a little bit when it first comes out. And of course, I'll probably be wrong. So let me know in the comments if you have different opinions than mine, because I'd love to hear that. The second thing is, this video is coming out probably a week and a half later than I thought. I have recorded these segments like 2 or 3 times each, and just my audio settings were messed up and it just wasn't good. So we're doing this again, which is why it's coming a little late. I'm also recording this in the daytime. I like recording at night because there are no sounds. You're going to hear cars going by on the street. Just pretend it's like waves on an ocean beach, and maybe that'll help relax you a little bit. And lastly, Restoration Games slapped the top of these desks and they slapped the top of the decks and said, this bad boy can fit so many movie quotes in it. So we're going to play a little game. Whenever there's a card name that's like a direct quote from the movie, we're all going to take a sip of water. We're going to hydrate together as homies. So without any further ado, let's talk about the T-Rex. Oh, and I guess one more thing. I will make more of an effort to zoom in on the cards, because in past first impressions video, I've kind of just like glossed over them a little bit, and some people commented and said, hey, we don't know the cards. Don't do that. So I'm going to make an effort to hold down spacebar on Vorpal today. So the T-Rex is a melee fighter with 27 health, a move value of 1, and of course she is by herself. Her ability says T-Rex is a large fighter. She can attack up to 2 spaces away. At the end of your turn, draw a card. So there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, 27 health is, I believe, the largest single hero health total in the game, as well as like a very, very sizable health pool. I'm not sure if it's the greatest currently. I know Beowulf has, 26? Arthur has 25. So actually, yeah, T-Rex might be the most beefy character in the game. This is balanced, of course, because she hits like a truck, but has very poor defenses and a lot of self-damage effects. So you have a lot less health than other heroes when you like factor in defensive values and things like that. Your move value is 1 and your melee, which looks horrible on paper, but your ability says you're a large fighter. T-Rex actually, her mini has 2 bases. So if the connection between 2 spaces is short enough, you can actually occupy 2 spaces at once on the battlefield, and you can attack from adjacent to either base you have, but you can also attack from up to 2 spaces away. So you have a lot of like range on that melee attack, but it's like range in a sense that it doesn't care about zones, it just cares about your positioning. So it's kind of like a hybrid of melee and ranged. So it's better than being straight up melee. And you kite very well because you can attack from 2 spaces away, so you don't have to make a melee attack from adjacent to your opponent. And especially if you're playing another melee character, that's just an excellent way to kite, because if you maneuver 1 space away from them and attack them on their turn, they can either run away or they can maneuver adjacent to you and hit you, in which case you can double attack them, which is excellent for you because you are an aggressive character. You hit like a truck. You want to end the game really fast, and just getting double attack opportunities are excellent for you. So you kite like a maniac. It also says at the end of your turn, draw a card. This is probably the biggest double-edged sword ability in the game. It's similar to Bigfoot's, because Bigfoot can draw cards, except the key word there is can, because T-Rex doesn't have a choice. She will always draw. Bigfoot, you have a choice, so you always just draw cards when you need them, and you don't when you don't. The T-Rex, her move value is 1, so she is relatively slow and vulnerable to just not being able to chase down enemies effectively, so you're going to be boosting a lot of your maneuvers. You also have a lot of attacks and defenses that you can boost, so you're going to be spending cards like there's no tomorrow. So it's very important for you to have card draw, so that by constantly boosting, you're not just completely at a hand disadvantage the whole game. So at the end of your turn, you draw a card, which is nice because it just constantly replenishes your hand and doesn't leave you without anything to do. The downside is you reach exhaustion a lot faster than other characters because you're just going to be drawing a bunch of extra cards during the game, which I think is fine because exhaustion doesn't really play into your game plan. You have 27 health, so if it did, you'd be insane, but just thematically that doesn't make sense, so I'm glad that they didn't design her like that. The pressure will be on you to end the game, so just go for it and smack your opponent really hard and hopefully kill them. There's a lot going on this character card, and it is absolutely fascinating. So she's just a bunch of fun to play because she's very, very different than some of the other characters, and she fits my ideal play style too. So I think I like her a little bit more than Sattler if I was just giving an opinion on this box. Her card back, you can see the footprint and the leaves in the background with the purple coloring. I love the aesthetic of this set. I love the colors present, and I'm actually a big fan of the art, even though it's a little bit more cartoony than some of the other Unmatched stuff. So the first card we're going to be looking at is When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth. Hydrate, homies. I think during the Sattler video, I'll be drinking a lot more water. But anyways, this is a 2-value attack, boost value of 3. You have 4 copies of it. It says during combat, you may boost this card. After combat, if you won the combat, draw 1 card, gain 1 action, and take 2 damage. A lot going on here. 2-value attacks aren't very good, but you can boost it. So it's kind of like a second shot, but Muldoons, not Medusas, which is alright. I guess you'd rather your boost attacks start at a base value 3 so that you can hopefully get it to a 6 with if you boost it with a 3, but you have a ton of high boost values. I think this card is a boost value of 3, and you have 4 copies of it. You have a boost 4 card and just a bunch of other 3s. So very regularly, this will be a 5, if not a 6, and you pretty much will win combat a majority of the time. I don't have a specific percentage with a 5-value attack, which is nice because it says if you win the combat, you get to draw a card. So you spend a card boosting and you get it back if you win. And obviously if you're not going to win the combat with the boost, you just don't. So you can basically boost it for free. You gain an action, so the attack is free, and you take 2 damage, which is the beginning of the self-damage effects that I've been talking about. So I think it's only worth it to boost this card if you're going to deal at least 2 damage, because if your opponent plays a 4 and you boost this to a 5, you're dealing 1 and taking 2, which is a negative health trade for you. Of course, again, in some matchups, it just might not matter. Like if you're playing against Robin Hood, he has 13 health, bad defenses, and no healing. So basically damage is damage on him. You just soak everything you can into him. But against some other characters like Sattler, for instance, who has a bunch of healing, that damage trade where you're dealing 1, taking 2 is not favorable, and I would not recommend it. So if you can deal at least 2 and make the trade even, it kind of works like a battle frenzy for Achilles, the pack card. That's a 3 that deals 2 to both in combat, which is a good trade for the T-Rex because she just has so much more starting health than other characters that if you're both taking the same amount of damage just throughout the game, they will die first. So very interesting card. I love that you have 4 copies of it. The next card is 15,000 pounds of muscle. We're going to take a half sip on that one. It's a 3-value attack, boost value of 3, another high boost value card, and only 2 copies. It says during combat, ignore the value of your opponent's card. After combat, take 2 damage. So it's kind of like a highway robbery where it ignores the value, but of course it doesn't cancel effects, which can be good if you play this into an Achilles heel. So basically, if it's not canceled, you're going to ignore your opponent's value and basically deal them 3 damage from your printed effect, which is awesome, especially if your opponent is value blocking you with something like a skirmish. It still deals 1 damage over a feint, so not terrible, but I guess you're getting the same amount of net damage anyway, because if the card effect goes through, you deal 3 and take 2, so you're actually ahead on 1 life, which is nice. And if they feint it, you're still ahead on 1 life because they take 1, you take 0. So I really like this card. This is probably my favorite card in the deck just because it feels so good when your opponent plays like a nice meaty 4 value block and you just say, oh, you blocked for 4, you're still taking 3 damage. Really fun card. The next card is Reckless Lunge. This is also a super fun card. It's a 3 value attack with a boost value of 4, so this is the nice primo high boost card I was talking about, and you have 3 copies of it, so which is a lot of boosting. It says, after combat, deal 3 damage to the opposing fighter, take 3 damage. So this is another card that, like 15,000 pounds of muscle, doesn't really care about the value of your opponent's card, because the after combat effect is what's so juicy. You deal them 3 damage and take 3 damage. It's a little risky though, just because it's an even trade, which again is fine if you're going to kill your opponent faster than they'll kill you just because you have so much health. But taking 3 damage is a lot, especially if you're playing all 3 copies of this card. Of course, you're dealing 9 to both fighters, but I think this card has a lot more utility consistently with its boost value, because you can get this when dinosaurs ruled the earth. Well, I said it again. I may as well drink. Hydrate, homies. And you can make that a 6, and you have some other cards that you'll see you care about boosting with. I think a truck just went by. It was really loud. I'm sorry. So I think I play this card as an attack way too much. I think you have to save it to boost, especially if your opponent is running away. You can attack someone up to 6 spaces away with maneuver, because you can boost this your maneuver up to a 5 and then attack them 1 space away with your large ability. So excellent reach there. So this is a lot of utility. I probably wouldn't play more than 1 as an attack, just from my experience. But I'm still like going to, of course, because yeah. The next card is Commanding Impact. It is a 5 value attack that we've seen from like Sinbad and Luke Cage's deck. It has boost value of 2, so it's actually the sorry, my voice is a little hoarse. It has a boost value of 2, and you have 3 copies of it, which is really nice. Just as after combat, draw a card, which is, it's just fine. It lets you be more aggressive. It replaces itself in your hand, so your hand size doesn't go down. And if you play it second action, or last action, I should say, I just like drawing 2 cards at once. I say draw with Commanding Impact, draw with ability, and it's just, you feel very powerful doing that. It's also the best feint punish that we've seen so far for attacking, because all 3 of these cards will only deal at most 1 or none damage over a feint, whereas this will deal 3. So there's some nice mix-up potential that you have against your opponent, and they can't just safely cancel everything you're going to throw at them. Really solid card, really brings her whole attack package together. The next card is Thrash. This is the first versatile. It is a 2 value. It has a boost value of 2, so another relatively low boost value for this deck, and you have 3 copies of it. It says during combat, you may boost this card. After combat, if you won the combat, deal 1 damage to each opposing fighter in the T-Rex's zone. So it's kind of like, I'm not going to say it so I don't have to drink. It's kind of like a versatile version of this card with a different victory condition, I should say, which is very useful, because as the T-Rex, I think you want to just go straight at your opponent's hero and just kill them with all the sustained pressure and big attacks you can throw at them. You do not want to get clogged up by a bunch of 1 health sidekicks if you're playing Medusa, InGen, Dracula, etc., etc. So having a source of AoE is very useful for the T-Rex, because she can very easily win a combat with this card, especially on defense. If you're boosting it to a 5 or a 6, like, you should be good in most matchups. Even attacking with a 5 or a 6 would be good. It's just a little bit more vulnerable to cancels if you're playing it as an attack. And another reason we'll get to in a second. So I really like this card as a way to make your opponent like play weirdly with their sidekicks, and you can really punish them if they just try to body block you with all of them. And it's a really important for the T-Rex, who likes like single target attacks, to have a source of AoE so that she can clear all the little scrubby minions that she doesn't want to deal with. The overall thing I should say about her defense package, though, is that like the Raptors, she only has 10 cards to block with. So you could attack with this, but then you're putting your overall block pool at 9, and it's just you might run into some problems if you run out of things to block with late in the game. But my, I guess, fix to that has been just attack more, and then you don't need to block. So really solid first defense card for Thrash. The next card is Terrifying Roar. This is another very interesting card. It is a 3-value versatile with a boost value of 3 and 2 copies. It says immediately. 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 Fighters cannot leave their space for the rest of the turn. This card has very cool implications, especially against some fighters like Robin Hood and Bruce Lee, because it just says, oh, you want to use your ability? So if you play this on defense, the defensive immediately effect will trigger first, because like the best podcast in the world, the defender resolves first. So if your opponent has a movement ability, like the fighters I mentioned, this just cancels that. If they play an attack card with a movement effect on it, like the game is afoot or a skirmish or something like that, it doesn't matter, because they can't leave their space for the rest of the turn, which is really useful, especially if your opponent attacks you first action and is planning on maneuvering away second action. You can play this, freeze them in place, and now you've set up hopefully a juicy double attack opportunity for you, which you love. You love being able to attack twice. I wouldn't really use this on offense, just because if it gets feinted, you won't get the effect through, because your attack or your immediately effect will resolve second, so the feint or cancel will have priority there, and it's just not super strong as a printed 3. So another really solid defense card, and it also has a boost value of 3 in case you need to use it for something else. And this is a familiar face that we've seen before. It is Momentous Shift. It's really funny art. Obviously, they couldn't do the the hand or the fist like punching through something, because the T-Rex would be like also, like for commanding impact, we know how like Luke Cage and Sinbad's theirs is like that. Obviously the T-Rex doesn't have big arms, so I like the liberties they took trying to fit the poses, but with a very non-human entity. It's a Momentous Shift. You know what it does at this point. It's a 5 when you attack with it, because I'm assuming you're going to move to trigger it. I mean, don't attack with a blank 3. You might have to play it on defense, though. You kind of have the Angel problem, where Angel has Momentous Shift, but a lot of times he just has to play it on defense because he doesn't have better options. So playing a blank 3 on defense is normally not super great, except you have 27 health, so like you don't really need to worry about value blocking too often, but you might have to worry about some of the self-damage, because I guess let's calculate this right now. I don't think you have any other self-damage cards. So when dinosaurs rule the earth, that's 4 copies, 2 damage each, that's 8 damage. 15,000 pounds of muscle is 2 copies of 2 damage, so that's 4, which brings our total up to 12. And reckless lunge is 3 damage times 3 copies, which is 9, so that's 21 self-damage that you can deal to yourself. Obviously, if you're actually getting all these effects off, your opponent is probably dead, but just keep that in mind, that if you're gonna try to get all those damaging effects off, you'll have 6 health, and you can't really value block very well, so just keep that in mind. And that's why I don't really like, I don't advise playing all those copies of Reckless Lunge, just because it's a lot of damage. So another like fine block option, but I like that you have the flexibility to use it as an attack if you want, and it's a good attack at 5 value. The next defense card, and specifically defense card, is You're Just Making Her Angry, which I believe is Hydration Time. I think Ellie says that, right? I don't remember. It's been a while since I've watched Jurassic Park. I want to go watch it. I guess I'm gonna have to watch it when I get the movie quotes in for the strategy guides, but whatever. It's a blue card. Interesting for a defensive character. It's a value 1. It is a boost value 1, and there's only 2 copies, so that I don't like the numbers that just came out of my mouth. But it says during combat you may boost this card. If you won the combat, return this card to your hand. So I like the consistency that we have here with the you may boost this card during combat. If you won the combat, something happens that we've seen on Thrash and When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth. And I like that there's a red, a purple, and a blue. Obviously, there couldn't be a yellow because it's not a combat. So you can boost it, and if you win the combat, you get it back. So it's kind of like a defensive what big hands you have from Little Red's deck. And this is a card I do not have figured out. So I've talked to B Cyclone, who is like the community T-Rex main, I think. Excuse me, that's what happens when I drink water during videos. And he really likes T-Rex. He's played her a lot, and he really likes this card. I talked to him a little bit before making this video. He likes this card. I do not like this card, which probably means I'm just being a little too aggressive, but I see the value that having like infinite defenses potentially has with this character, especially since like those are the only blockable cards you have. It's only 10, not a lot, and being able to recycle some is nice. The problem is if you're boosting this on defense, you're probably going to have to get it up to a 4 at least, if not higher, and like the maximum it can go is a 5 with Reckless Lunge. If you're boosting it with these good 3 value boost cards, that means you're not playing them as attacks or boosting them with like Thrash or Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth for like damage. So you're just playing it to not take damage yourself, which I'm not sure if that's the best trade, but I could see how it would be helpful. I think it'd be a lot easier if this had a printed value of 2 so that you could boost it with like Shift or Commanding Impact without having to really expend other high priority, high boost value cards. So I'm not sold on this card, but please let me know if you think it's like the best card in the deck. I just don't see it. But again, this is a first impressions video. Probably wrong. The next card is Ripples in the Water, which it's not a quote per se, but it's a reference. That's good water. It's a scheme. Boost value 2, 3 copies. It says place T-Rex in any space in her zone. Then each opponent with a fighter adjacent to T-Rex discards 1 random card. There's a lot to unpack with this card, and I like most of it. It's a mobility scheme, which is nice. It kind of reminds me of Pure Evil from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but it's much better than that card because placing T-Rex in her zone is a little misleading because, like I said, her base has 2 spaces on it. So if you place her so that one of those bases is in her zone, the one she started in, that's fine. And the other base can overhang into a different zone, which means you can effectively use this card and get adjacent to someone who is 1 space into a zone, which is super nice. And that's the problem that Dr. Jekyll has, is that Pure Evil is too easy to play around. And if he doesn't use that first action on a high turn when someone is not adjacent to him, and he has to maneuver and take a damage, that just stinks for him. So this card is a lot easier to use. It's a mobility scheme on a character with a move value 1, which is super nice, and the resulting effect is amazing because you get to discard a random card from their hand, which random discards are always nice. If you're using this first action to attack them, or get close to them to attack them, second action, having them discard a random card is nice because maybe they just lost the best block card in their hand or a feint. Super useful. And you have 3 copies of it, so you can consistently use this throughout the game. I love this card, except the one problem is it has to be adjacent to the opposing fighter. And like I said earlier, you're great at kiting because you don't need to attack your opponent from adjacent to them because you're large. You can attack from 2 spaces away. So the problem, I guess it's not really a problem, but there's like a little bit of anti-synergy with this card because when I would play it, I would do the jump. I would like position myself 1 space away from my opponent, and like because that's just like good positioning to attack them with. And like oftentimes my opponent would say like, you're supposed to be adjacent to me if you want the discard, and I was like, you're right, but I don't want to end adjacent to you because then you can just attack me without having to like get closer. So like that conflicts a little bit with your ability, but overall I think the other strengths of this card really make up for that, and it's a really, really, really strong card, especially on some maps like Raptor Paddock, which I guess I should talk about this right now because it's actually like a crime that I haven't mentioned this already. T-Rex is a large fighter. Some things about... They're coming for me. Anyways, some things about large fighters... I'll just wait for it to pass, whatever. The Doppler effect in practice right there. Some things about large fighters are they ignore one-way arrow spaces. So on Raptor Paddock, she can just move in and out of the pit however she wants, which makes it one of her best maps because it's so small. She ignores the main like disadvantage map feature that other characters have, and if she's in like the brown or the blue zone, ripples in the water will just like send her anywhere. On the flip side though, large characters cannot use secret passages like on Baskerville Manor, which makes that map like the mirror, not the polar opposite of Raptor Paddock, because on Raptor Paddock she ignores the map feature and it's a positive for her. On Baskerville, she can't use the map feature and it's a huge negative for her, because I imagine if you're playing on that map, your opponent will just bounce around the secret passages and make you boost maneuver every single turn, because that map is actually pretty big if you're not playing it with secret passages. And so the T-Rex has a lot going on with certain maps, especially in the future if they introduce or reuse certain mechanics. And like on Hanging Gardens, being able to occupy like multiple high ground spaces is probably insane. Although you have to be adjacent to your opponent to actually get the high ground, so it might not work as well with your ability as it might seem. But so a little large fighter blurb that I should have talked about a little bit earlier, but it's just a lot to unpack with this character, and it slipped my mind. Closer Than She Appears, also a nice reference. Maybe we'll skip out on the water for now so that I don't end up burping. This card was probably designed before Bloody Mary, since the Jurassic Park sets have been in the works for a while. It's just licensing stuff that, in the pandemic and the global shipping crisis, that kind of slowed it down a little bit. So it's the same card from Bloody Mary's deck, 2-value boost, although I'm not sure if hers is a 2-value. You have 3 copies of it compared to Mary's 2, and you move T-Rex up to 1 space, draw 1 card, gain 1 action. So it's just like a nice way to reposition. It's basically a maneuver. You get to move 1 space, you draw a card, but it's free because it gives you an action. So it's a free maneuver that you can't boost, which is really nice if your opponent is 2 spaces away, so that you move 1 space and you can attack them, because they're only 1 space away now, and it can set up double attack opportunities, which is really nice. So it's a really solid card that's just flexible. A little bit less good than Ripples in the Water, but there's opportunities for it to really shine. And the last card is 65 Million Years of Gut Instinct. Sounds like a movie quote, but it also plausibly could not be, so we're gonna half sip again. The Sattler video is when we're really going to be drinking. It's another scheme, 3-value boost, 2 copies of it, and it says choose a card in your discard pile other than 65 Million Years of Gut Instinct and add it to your hand. So this is kind of like Breather from Daredevil's deck, except you can grab other schemes back with this card, just not the other copy of it like you can with Battle Harden. And that is because if Breather and 65 Million Years could recycle themselves, Daredevil would just run in a corner, play Breather, get back Breather, play Breather, get back Breather, just do that on his turn, and just pass infinitely, not care about exhaustion at all. And the T-Rex, she could do that just a little less good, because she will always draw a card at the end of her turn with her ability. So they could have kept it, and like hypothetically, just recycling this card and drawing a card on your turn, like, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, except that type of gameplay loop is incredibly uninteractive and unfun and should not exist in this game ever. So I'm glad that they designed T-Rex so that like she wasn't really supposed to be like an endgame exhaustion fighter. She's just supposed to come out of the gate swinging and swing, and then eventually she just runs out of steam. But so this is an interesting card because you can get back any other card, basically, except this card, twice, because there's 2 copies. So it might be nice to get another Ripples in the Water for another random discard. Might be nice to get back a Terrifying Roar or a Thrash for another defense. Commanding Impact for like a big printed value if your opponent can't value block very well. Reckless Lunge for high boost values, or like 15,000 pounds of muscle for more direct damage if your opponent is out of cancel. So there's a lot of things you can do with it, a lot of flexibility. You can even use it as a boost because it's a 3 value boost, and just getting these late in the game will be a lot better than getting them early in the game. Although you have the card draw to cycle through your deck pretty quickly and get a bunch of stuff out. And I should say that you should not be double maneuvering as T-Rex, because that means you're drawing 3 cards that turn. That's just like that's not good for you. You should be turn 1 maneuver, boosting, and swinging. And some people might not like that play style. I love it. I love playing with the cards not close to my chest. I don't think that's the right thing. I like playing fast and loose, just like with the law in real life. that was a joke for legal reasons. So what do I think of this character? I think she is incredibly fun to play. She's like a steel cannon, but the steel cannon is like being melted in a furnace as you're like shooting cannonballs out of it, and eventually just like the balls stop coming out. It's just, she's so fun. I just can't help but smile when describing this character. She provides a lot of like unique mechanic interactions, especially with being large and just the stuff going on with like trying to boost and win combats and the self damage. Very interesting. Competitively, I'm not sure how she's gonna do, just because exhaustion was like a mainstay of the meta, and she doesn't seem to do very well on that, except with the addition of the new Hell's Kitchen characters. Aggression as like a counter tactic to some of the meta, I think, is coming back, because all of the Hell's Kitchen characters either are aggressive or fold to aggression. So maybe there's a place for her in the meta. And she steamrolls people if they can't block everything, and she can throw out some pretty big cards very consistently, and she has her giant foot on the gas pedal the whole game because of her card draw ability. So her window of opportunity for killing you is a little bit shorter than some other characters, but she is going full force at you through that window. And I think some characters like Robin Hood, who have just like a bunch of dinky small value attacks, like she doesn't care about highway robbery. And like Robin Hood can only value block for 3, so I think she just demolishes characters like that. Although I haven't really stress tested a lot of matchups, so like I've played against Achilles, Sinbad, Medusa, Sattler, and I think a lot of times I've played basically each matchup twice roughly. And the first game, I think I would try to kill the sidekick, would run out of steam late in the game. The second game, when I just went full force at the hero, I kind of just like crushed them. I even beat Medusa twice on Raptor Paddock, though. So I think there is potential for her, maybe even against Sherlock, because of just how hard she can hit. And I think dedicated players like the aforementioned B Cyclone, wonderful person, can really pull off some crazy, crazy wins with her. It's just probably a little risky. So I think her floor is probably like a little bit higher than like Bloody Mary and like D tier maybe, and her ceiling is probably low B. So we're gonna roughly put her around like the middle of the pack in C tier with I think a lot of potential upside depending on the matchup. So those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear what you think about this character. She is probably in my top 10 favorite heroes in the game right now. I love her to death, and she has recklessly lunged into my heart. So yes, thank you for watching this first impressions video. The Sattler video should be out right after this one if you want to go watch them back to back, and fill up your water if you're gonna if you're gonna be watching that video. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, like, subscribe, and yeet!